I smoothed my skirt and took a deep breath before pushing open the heavy oak door to Jake's new office. The plaque reading, Jake Hartley, President, still gleamed, barely a week old. My husband glanced up from his computer, his brow furrowed. "Nora, I'm swamped. What is it?" I plastered on a smile. "The Henderson account files are ready for your review, and the staff meeting starts in 10 minutes. Jake waved his hand dismissively. "Cancel it. I've got more important things to deal with." "But Jake, everyone's been preparing their presentations all week. They're expecting you to—" "I said cancel it," he snapped, his eyes never leaving the screen. "That's an order, not a request." I bit my tongue, nodding curtly before retreating. As I closed the door, I caught a glimpse of Jake's reflection in the window. He was already engrossed in his work again, oblivious to the sting of his words. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, willing my racing heart to slow. This wasn't the Jake I'd married. The man I loved had been passionate about architecture, dedicated to his team. Now it seemed the fancy title had gone straight to his head. "Everything okay, Nora?" I looked up to see Kenneth, Jake's father, watching me with concern. Even in retirement, he still came by the office regularly. I straightened, forcing a smile. "Of course, just a busy morning. How are you, Kenneth?" He studied me for a moment. "I'm fine, but you don't look it. What's my son done now?" I hesitated, torn between loyalty and frustration. "It's nothing, really. Jake's just adjusting to his new role." Kenneth's eyes narrowed. Adjusting or letting it go to his head? Before I could respond, Jake's voice boomed from his office. "Nora, where are those files?" I grabbed the folder from my desk, shooting Kenneth an apologetic look. "Duty calls." As I re-entered Jake's office, he barely glanced up. "Finally, leave them there and close the door on your way out." "Jake," I said, steeling myself, "the team really needs you at this meeting. They've worked hard on—" He slammed his hand on the desk. "For God's sake, Nora, I'm the president now. I decide what's important, not you or anyone else. Got it?" I flinched, shocked by his outburst. "I'm just trying to help, Jake. This company means everything to your father, and I promised him I'd—" "My father isn't in charge anymore," Jake interrupted, his voice cold. "I am, and if you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be here either." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at him, searching for any trace of the man I'd fallen in love with, but all I saw was a stranger, drunk on power and ego. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll cancel the meeting." As I turned to leave, Jake's phone buzzed. He answered it, his tone instantly shifting to smooth charm. "Bella, darling." "Yes, I can't wait for our business lunch. See you soon." My hand froze on the doorknob. Bella? The name was unfamiliar, but the way Jake said it sent a chill down my spine. I glanced back, catching a glimpse of a sly smile on his face before he noticed me watching. "What?" he snapped. "Don't you have work to do?" I nodded mutely and fled the office, my mind reeling. Outside, the disappointed faces of our team greeted me as I announced the canceled meeting, but their frustration paled in comparison to the dread building in my stomach. Who was Bella? And what kind of business lunch made my husband smile like that? As I sank into my chair, I realized with growing certainty that my marriage and this company were about to face a storm that none of us were prepared for. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, determined to salvage what I could of yesterday's disaster. As I walked through the bullpen, the tension was palpable. Whispers ceased as I passed, replaced by forced smiles and awkward nods. "Morning, Nora," Sarah, our lead designer, called out. "Any word on rescheduling the meeting?" I hesitated, torn between honesty and diplomacy. "I'm working on it, Sarah. Jake's adjusting to his new role." Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Adjusting? Is that what we're calling it now?" Before I could respond, Jake's booming voice echoed through the office. "Nora, my office now!" I hurried to Jake's door, bracing myself. He was pacing, agitation radiating off him in waves. "What the hell is this?" He thrust a stack of papers at me. I scanned the top sheet, my heart sinking. It was a formal complaint from the design team, citing Jake's absence from crucial meetings and delays in project approvals. "Jake, they're just frustrated. If we could set up a meeting to address their concerns." "Their concerns," he scoffed. "I'm running a business here, not a daycare. If they can't handle the pressure, they can leave." "But Jake, these are your father's most trusted employees. They've been with the company for years." His eyes flashed dangerously. "My father isn't in charge anymore. I am, And I won't have my authority questioned by a bunch of whiny designers. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Jake, please, this isn't like you. What's really going on? For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Jake, vulnerable, uncertain, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Nothing's going on, he snapped. Just do your job and keep them in line. That's what I'm paying you for, isn't it? The words stung more than he knew. I wasn't just an employee. I was his wife, his partner, or at least I thought I was. As I turned to leave, Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a sly smile spreading across his face. I'm heading out for lunch. Hold my calls. But Jake, we have the client meeting at 1. Reschedule it, he said, already halfway out the door. I watched him go, a knot forming in my stomach. This wasn't just about work anymore. Something was very, very wrong. Back at my desk, I buried myself in damage control, placating angry clients, smoothing ruffled feathers among the staff. By mid-afternoon, I was exhausted and on edge. A gentle knock on my cubicle startled me. I looked up to see Kenneth, concern etched on his face. Nora, dear, got a minute? I nodded, grateful for the interruption. Kenneth settled into the chair across from me, his eyes kind but searching. I've been hearing things, he said softly. About Jake, about how he's running the company. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Kenneth had entrusted his life's work to his son. How could I tell him it was all falling apart? Kenneth, He held up a hand, silencing me. You don't have to protect him, Nora. Not from me. I've known something was off for a while now. I hoped he'd grow into the role. Tears pricked at my eyes. I don't know what to do, I whispered. He won't listen to me. He's pushing everyone away. Kenneth reached across the desk, squeezing my hand. We'll figure this out, Nora. Together. This company, this family, it means everything to me. I won't let Jake destroy it. Just then, Jake's voice boomed through the office once more. Where the hell is everyone? Don't we have work to do? Kenneth and I exchanged a look. The storm was far from over. As I stood to face whatever crisis Jake had conjured up now, Kenneth's words echoed in my mind. Together. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. But as I rounded the corner and saw Jake standing there, his tie askew and a hint of lipstick on his collar, that hope flickered and died. The man I loved was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. I trudged up the driveway, exhausted from another day of damage control at the office. All I wanted was a hot bath and a glass of wine. But as I reached for my keys, the front door swung open. A stunning blonde stepped out, her lipstick slightly smudged and her blouse hastily buttoned. She froze when she saw me, her eyes widening in recognition. Oh, you must be Nora, she purred, recovering quickly. I'm Bella, Jake's consultant. My world tilted on its axis. Bella, the name from Jake's phone call, the lipstick on his collar, it all clicked into place with sickening clarity. Consultant? I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Bella's lips curved into a predatory smile. Oh yes, Jake and I have been working very closely together. He's quite the visionary, you know. Before I could respond, Jake appeared in the doorway, his face pale. Nora, you're home early. I stared at him, searching for any trace of guilt or remorse, but all I saw was panic and calculation. Bella was just leaving, he said quickly, ushering her towards her car. They exchanged a loaded glance before she drove away, leaving me alone with my husband, a man I suddenly felt I didn't know at all. I brushed past Jake into the house, my mind reeling. He followed, his excuses already flowing. Nora, it's not what you think. Bella's just helping with some new projects. We were brainstorming ideas for... I whirled to face him. Don't you dare lie to me, Jake. Not now. He faltered, the facade cracking. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. It just happened? I echoed, my voice rising. Like you just happened to neglect your responsibilities at work? Like you just happened to treat your employees, our friends, like dirt? Jake's expression hardened. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Dad left me with impossible shoes to fill. I'm doing the best I can. By having an affair? By running the company into the ground? I'm not. He stopped, frustration etched on his face. Look, things got complicated, but I can fix this. We can fix this. I laughed bitterly. We? There is no we anymore, Jake. You made sure of that. As the words left my mouth, I realized their truth. Whatever we had, our marriage, our partnership, it was gone. Shattered by Jake's betrayal and my own blind loyalty. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression conflicted. "It's Bella, isn't it?" I said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Nora, please, let me explain." But I was done listening, done making excuses for him. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Jake called after me. "Away from you," I shot back. "I need to think." As I drove through the darkening streets, tears blurred my vision. How had we come to this? The man I loved, the life we'd built, it was all crumbling around me. My phone rang. Kenneth's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Nora? Are you all right? You left the office in such a hurry?" His concern broke something inside me. The dam burst, and I found myself pouring out everything. Jake's affair, the state of the company, my own shattered heart. Kenneth listened in silence. When I finished, he spoke softly. "Oh, Nora, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I never should have put so much pressure on Jake." "It's not your fault," I insisted. "Jake made his choices." "Perhaps," Kenneth sighed, "but now we need to make ours. Come to my house, we'll figure this out together." As I turned towards Kenneth's neighborhood, a strange calm settled over me. The worst had happened. Jake's betrayal was out in the open. But I wasn't alone. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of strength returning. Whatever came next, I would face it head on. No more excuses. No more blind loyalty. It was time to fight for myself and for the company that had become my second home. I stepped into the office, my head held high despite the whispers and sidelong glances. After my conversation with Kenneth last night, I was determined to face whatever came my way. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I rounded the corner. There, in the middle of the bullpen, stood Jake with his arm around Bella's waist. She was dressed in a pencil skirt and blouse that wouldn't have looked out of place on me just a few months ago. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Bella," Rat Jake announced, his voice carrying across the stunned silence. "She'll be joining our team as a special consultant." My heart pounded in my ears as I locked eyes with Jake. His gaze was challenging, daring me to make a scene. Bella smirked, clearly relishing her new position in the company and in my husband's arms. Sarah, our lead designer, spoke up first. "But Mr. Hartley, we already have a full team." "And Nora. Nora will be assisting Bella in getting up to speed," Jake interrupted smoothly. "Won't you, dear?" All eyes turned to me. I could feel the mix of pity and curiosity radiating from my colleagues. Taking a deep breath, I plastered on a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Of course," I managed. "Welcome aboard, Bella." The next few hours were a blur of forced pleasantries and thinly veiled tension. I retreated to my office, trying to focus on work, but my mind kept replaying Jake's betrayal over and over. A knock on my door startled me from my thoughts. It was Kenneth, his face etched with concern. "Nora, I just heard. Are you all right?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. "I don't know how much more of this I can take, Kenneth. It's like Jake's determined to hurt me in every way possible." Kenneth's expression hardened. "This ends now. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Jake's gone too far." Before I could respond, Jake burst into the office, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Dad?" he snarled. "This is my company now. You can't just waltz in and—" "Enough!" Kenneth's voice boomed, silencing Jake. "You've made a mockery of everything I built. It's time you faced the consequences." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Consequences? I'm just getting started." In fact, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, tossing it onto my desk. "Consider this my first official act as president." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Jake. "You're firing me?" I whispered, disbelief and hurt washing over me. Jake's laugh was cold. "Firing you? Oh no, Nora. I'm setting you free. From this job, from this marriage, from everything." I stared at the papers, my world crumbling around me, all those years, all our dreams, reduced to a few sheets of legal jargon. "Jake, please," Kenneth pleaded. "Think about what you're doing. Nora's been the backbone of this company. Without her, we'll finally move forward," Jake snapped. "Face it, Dad, your way of doing things is outdated. Bella and I have big plans for the future." As they argued, a strange calm settled over me. I looked at the divorce papers, then at Jake, this stranger wearing my husband's face. In that moment, I made a decision. "I'll sign," I said quietly, cutting through their heated exchange. Both men turned to me, shocked. Jake recovered first, a triumphant smirk spreading across his face. "I knew you'd see reason, Nora. It's for the best, really. I met his gaze steadily. You're right, Jake. It is for the best, but not for the reasons you think. With a steady hand, I signed the papers. As I did, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Jake might have thrown away our marriage, but I was done being a victim. I quit, I announced, standing up. Effective immediately, Jake's smirk faltered. What? You can't just... I can, and I am, I interrupted. Good luck running this company without me, Jake. You're going to need it. As I walked out of the office, head held high, I heard Kenneth's voice behind me. Nora, wait. I paused, turning back. Kenneth's eyes were filled with a mixture of pride and determination. I have a proposition for you, he said. One that might just save this company and give you the fresh start you deserve. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it, on my own terms. I sat across from Kenneth in his cozy home office, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. The events of the past few days swirled in my mind like a tempest. Nora, Kenneth began, his voice gentle but firm, I want you to come work for my nonprofit architectural trust. We need someone with your skills and integrity. I blinked, surprised. But Kenneth, what about the company? Jake? Jake made his choice, Kenneth interrupted, a hint of sadness in his eyes. Now it's time for you to make yours. As I considered his offer, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. SOS. Everything's falling apart here. Jake and Bella are running the place into the ground. We need you, Nora. My heart clenched. Despite everything, I still cared about the company and the people I'd worked with for years. I need some time to think, I told Kenneth. He nodded, understanding. Of course, but don't take too long. We both know Jake won't waste any time destroying what we've built. The next morning, I steeled myself and walked into the office one last time to clear out my desk. The atmosphere was tense, with whispered conversations stopping abruptly as I passed. As I packed my things, Sarah appeared at my door, her face drawn with worry. Nora, thank God you're here. It's a disaster. Jake's canceled 3 major projects, and Bella's been reassigning teams without any regard for their expertise. Clients are furious, and... I don't work here anymore, Sarah. I cut in, my voice tight. There's nothing I can do. Sarah's eyes widened. You're leaving? But what about us? What about the company? Before I could respond, Jake's voice boomed from the hallway. Nora, what are you doing here? He stormed into my office, Bella trailing behind him like a smug shadow. I'm just collecting my things, I said calmly, refusing to be intimidated. Jake's eyes narrowed. Good. The sooner you're gone, the better. Bella's more than capable of handling your responsibilities. I couldn't help but laugh. Is she? Is that why clients are threatening to pull out? Why the staff is in chaos? Bella stepped forward, her perfectly manicured nails digging into Jake's arm. I'll have you know I'm doing an excellent job. Jake thinks I'm a natural. I'm sure he does, I replied coolly, but running a successful architectural firm takes more than just being natural. Jake's face flushed with anger. That's enough. Get out, Nora. You're no longer welcome here. As I picked up my box of belongings, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Kenneth strode in, flanked by 2 members of the board. What's going on here? Jake demanded. Kenneth's voice was steel. Emergency board meeting, son. Your recent decisions have put this company at risk, and we're here to discuss your future as president. Jake paled, his bravado crumbling. You can't do this. I'm in charge now. We'll see about that, one of the board members said grimly. As the group moved towards the conference room, Kenneth caught my eye. Nora, we could use your insight in this meeting, if you're willing. I hesitated, torn between my desire to wash my hands of this mess and my loyalty to the company I'd helped build. Jake sneered. She doesn't work here anymore, Dad. She has no say. Something in me snapped. I set down my box and straightened my shoulders. Actually, I think I will stay for this meeting. After all, I seem to be the only one who knows how this company really runs. Bella gasped. Jake sputtered, but Kenneth smiled proudly. As we filed into the conference room, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting the legacy Kenneth had built and the livelihoods of everyone who worked here. Whatever happened next, I was ready to fight. Not for Jake, not for our failed marriage, but for the company and people I believed in. It was time to show everyone, especially Jake, exactly what I was capable of. The boardroom crackled with tension as I laid out the stark reality of the company's situation. Spreadsheets and reports covered the table, each one a damning indictment of Jake's leadership. In the past month alone, we've lost 3 major clients, I explained, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. Our reputation in the industry is in freefall, and staff morale is at an all-time low. Jake's face was a mask of fury and disbelief. This is ridiculous. We're doing fine. Bella and I have been working on new strategies that will... That will what, Jake? Kenneth interrupted, his voice sharp. Drive us further into the ground? The numbers don't lie. I watched as the board members exchanged worried glances. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of the company we'd all worked so hard to build. Bella, who had insisted on attending, piped up. But Jake's been working so hard. He's been at the office late every night, coming up with innovative ideas. I couldn't help but scoff. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a company in crisis and a president more concerned with his personal life than his professional responsibilities. Jake's eyes flashed dangerously. You don't know what you're talking about, Nora. You're just bitter because I moved on. Moved on? I laughed credulously. You destroyed our marriage, and now you're destroying this company. That's not moving on, Jake. That's burning everything to the ground. The oldest board member, Mr. Hawkins, cleared his throat. I think we've heard enough. It's clear that drastic action needs to be taken to save this company. Jake paled. What are you saying? I'm saying, Mr. Hawkins continued, that we need to consider new leadership, effective immediately. The room erupted into chaos. Jake shouted accusations, Bella cried, and the board members argued amongst themselves. Through it all, I sat silently, a strange calm settling over me. Suddenly, Jake turned to me, his eyes wild. Nora, please, you have to help me. Tell them I can fix this. Tell them we can work together again, like before. I stared at him, this man who had once been my partner in every sense of the word. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the Jake I used to know, scared, vulnerable, pleading for help. But then Bella's hand snaked possessively around his arm, and reality came crashing back. I'm sorry, Jake, I said softly, but you made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences. Kenneth stood, his voice cutting through the din. I move that we vote on Jake's continued leadership of this company. All in favor of removing Jake from his position as president? Raise your hand. Time seemed to slow as hands began to rise. 1, 2, 3, a clear majority. Jake's face crumpled as the reality of what was happening sank in. This isn't fair, Bella shrieked. You can't do this to us. But it was done. Jake was out, and the company I loved was hanging by a thread. As the meeting adjourned, Kenneth pulled me aside. Nora, we need you. The company needs you. Will you come back and help us rebuild? I hesitated, torn between my desire to help and my need for a fresh start. Before I could answer, Jake approached, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Nora, please, he begged. Don't let them do this. You know me better than anyone. You know I can make this right if you just give me another chance. I looked from Jake to Kenneth, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. The future of the company and my own future hung in the balance. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about saving a business. It was about standing up for myself, for my worth, for everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. Whatever came next, I knew it would change everything. I stood at the podium, facing a sea of expectant faces. The company-wide meeting had been called to address the recent upheaval, and as the newly appointed interim CEO, it fell to me to chart our course forward. As many of you know, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The past few weeks have been tumultuous for our company, but today marks a new beginning. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jake slip into the back of the room, his face haggard. Bella was nowhere to be seen. We've lost clients, yes, we've faced setbacks, but the heart of this company, the talent, dedication, and vision that each of you brings to your work, that remains unchanged. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. I pressed on, outlining our plan to rebuild client trust and stabilize our finances. As I spoke, I could see hope rekindling in the eyes of my colleagues. Suddenly, Jake's voice cut through the air. This is all lies. Heads whipped around as he stormed down the aisle. Nora's trying to steal my company. She orchestrated this whole thing to push me out. Gasps and whispers filled the room. I gripped the podium, willing myself to stay calm. "Jake, this isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time," he shouted, his face flushed with anger. "You turned my own father against me. You manipulated the board. That's enough." Kenneth's voice boomed from the side of the stage. He strode forward, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "Jake, you did this to yourself. Your actions, your decisions, they're what brought us to this point." Jake's eyes darted wildly between Kenneth and me. "Dad, please, you can't let her do this. It's our family legacy." Kenneth's expression softened slightly. "Son, the legacy isn't just about the name on the building. It's about integrity, hard work, and doing right by our employees and clients. Nora understands that. It's time you did too." A tense silence fell over the room. I could feel everyone's eyes on us, waiting to see how this family drama would play out. Jake's shoulders sagged, the fight seeming to drain out of him. "So that's it? I'm just out?" I stepped away from the podium, approaching Jake cautiously. "It doesn't have to be the end, Jake. There's still a place for you here if you're willing to earn it back." For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved, vulnerable, uncertain. But then his expression hardened. "I don't need your pity, Nora, or yours, Dad. I'll start my own firm. You'll see. I'll build something even bigger, even better." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. I returned to the podium, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes upon me. This was the moment that would define not just my leadership, but the future of the company. I know that was difficult to witness, I began, my voice slightly shaky. But it's a perfect example of why we're here today. This company isn't about one person's ego or ambition. It's about all of us, working together to create something extraordinary. I paused, looking out at the faces of my colleagues, some skeptical, some hopeful, all waiting for direction. I can't promise it will be easy. We have a long road ahead of us. But I can promise you this. Every decision I make will be in the best interest of this company and the people who make it great. That's you. All of you. As I continued outlining our path forward, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The worst was over. Jake was gone. His last-ditch effort to undermine me had failed, and I finally had the chance to lead on my own terms. But as I caught Kenneth's eye, I saw a flicker of worry there, and I realized that while one chapter of this saga might be closing, another was just beginning. The real test of my leadership and our company's resilience was still to come. 6 months had passed since that fateful company meeting, and I stood at the window of my new office, gazing out at the city skyline. The view was different now, not just because I was in Kenneth's nonprofit trust building, but because I saw the world through new eyes. A knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. "Come in," I called. Sarah entered, her face beaming. "Nora, you won't believe this. The Henderson Project, we got it!" I couldn't help but grin. The Henderson Project was exactly the kind of socially responsible, innovative design work I'd always dreamed of doing. "That's fantastic, Sarah. The team must be thrilled." "They are," she nodded. "And there's something else you should know." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. Sarah took a deep breath. "Jake's company, it's officially bankrupt. They filed for Chapter 11 this morning. The news hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything, a part of me had hoped Jake would find his way." "And Jake?" I asked quietly. "No one's seen him in days, but Bella—" Sarah hesitated. "She showed up here earlier, looking for a job. Said Jake left her high and dry." I sank into my chair, processing this information. The Jake I'd known, the man I'd loved and built a life with, was truly gone. In his place was a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly success could turn to ashes when built on the wrong foundation. As if summoned by my thoughts, Kenneth appeared in the doorway. "I heard the news," he said softly. "How are you holding up?" I managed a small smile. "I'm okay, it's just a lot to take in." Kenneth nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and pride. "You've done remarkable things here, Nora. This new wing of the trust, the projects you're taking on, you're changing lives." "We're changing lives," I corrected him. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support." He waved away my gratitude. "You did this, Nora. You took a terrible situation and turned it into something beautiful. That's a rare gift." As Kenneth and Sarah left, I found myself alone with my thoughts once more. I thought about Jake, about the life we'd shared and the dreams we'd had. I thought about Bella and how her pursuit of status and wealth had left her with nothing. But mostly, I thought about myself. The woman I'd been when this all started, desperate to please, afraid to stand up for herself, seemed like a stranger now. My phone buzzed, startling me. A text from an unknown number. "It's Jake. Can we talk?" My heart raced as I stared at the screen. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at the chance. Now, I took a deep breath and typed my response. "I'm sorry, Jake, but I've moved on. I hope you find peace." As I hit send, I felt the last threads of my old life fall away. The future stretched out before me, full of possibility and promise. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. It was my team, eager to start brainstorming for the Henderson project. "Come on in," I said, smiling. "Let's create something amazing." As we gathered around the conference table, ideas flowing freely, I felt a surge of gratitude. This was where I belonged, not defined by my relationship to Jake or anyone else, but standing on my own 2 feet, surrounded by people who respected and valued me for who I was. The journey had been painful, but it had led me here, to a place of strength, purpose, and self-discovery. And as I looked around at the bright, eager faces of my team, I knew that the best was yet to come. "All right," I said, picking up a marker. "Let's reimagine the future, together." And as we began to sketch out our vision, I realized that this moment, this work, this life I'd built from the ashes of my old one, this was my true happily ever after. Not a fairy tale ending, but something far more valuable. A new beginning, crafted by my own hands and heart. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I was ready for whatever challenges it might bring. Because now I knew the truth. My worth wasn't determined by anyone else's actions or opinions. It came from within, from the strength and resilience I'd discovered in myself. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. Greatest victory of all. Greatest victory of all. Greatest victory of all.